Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear us?
We can hear you.
We're waiting on a quorum, so we'll get started as soon as we have two more committee members to show up. Good afternoon again. So we don't have a quorum, but what we are going to do is start the meeting. We will not conduct any business like approving the agenda or the minutes. But those committee members who have done the work are going to share the work that they have done and the information. Is that good with everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, Caitlin, are you on?
She just responded.
Yes, I am.
All right. So we're going to get started.
All right, let's do it. So we're going to start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
America,
to the
the
republic,
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Ms. Robin, do we have any public comments at this time?
No.
All right. All right, so we're not able to approve the agenda. We're not able to approve the committee amendment. So we're going to go straight to the review of the resources. So based off of that, the first unit was Miss Cindy. So
You'll just remind me, because I'm creating a new document, unit 1, tell me what.
I'll tell you what it
was
is.
and-
Okay.
Yep.
Sure. This is module 1, sexuality and you. Do you need the pages?
Sure.
Okay. Page 5 and 6 of 42. Page 5 and 6 of 42. Sexuality and making responsible decisions was lesson 1. My comments are, they gave a good definition of self-concept and decision-making, 6 steps for decision-making. Lesson 2, adolescence and development, page 7 out of 42. The text explained developmental tasks, abstract, logical, and higher level thinking, which was good information, and they gave a good definition of empathy, which is often overlooked in this kind of information. So that was good. And then lesson 3, adolescence, a time of change, page 8 of 42. Covered the endocrine system, puberty, hormones, and specifically stated that puberty occurs between the ages of 12 and 18, which I think is good because a lot of times students are asking themselves, am I normal? And it explains the pituitary gland function plus LH and FSH hormones. I thought all pictures were appropriate in the text. And as far as performance indicators, I'll go slowly, I thought it covered GHS 1.1. MHS 4.1. And that was it for that particular one. Did I go too fast?
So I'm mainly documenting concerns, but I'm still taking
Okay.
some notes in the meantime.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
were there any questions for module 1? For Miss Cindy?
oh,
Okay, thank you very much. You also had the pleasure of doing module 2,
yep, that is
relationships.
lesson 1, relationships and communication, page 11 of 42, covered values, peer pressure, was good information on making healthy dating decisions, 5 communication skills, helpful, also good content on listening skills and conflict and TALK talk strategy, which I think are helpful for that age. Lesson 2, decisions about sexual relationships, pages 12 of 42. The vocabulary covered abstinence, consent, affirmative consent, intimacy, and refusal skills. Good explanation of affirmative consent, meaning no coercion. Gives benefits of abstinence. I want to repeat, gives benefits of abstinence. And a nice section on refusal skills. And I thought there were appropriately diverse photos of students of all type were pictured in that particular text, which is good. All right, as far as the standards, I think they covered GHS 1.3, MHS 4.1, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, that moves us to module 3, the reproductive system. And Miss Constance.
Also to get to the page numbers, I forgot to note the page number.
Oh, it's 14 on the online.
14.
Yep.
Yeah, so like, there are 3 sections here. So lesson 1 is the male reproductive system.
Okay.
They did a really good job of definitions regarding male anatomy. They even addressed health risks associated with male anatomy, specifically testicular cancer. It described self-exams and just kind of really focused a lot on individual and personal responsibility with understanding and recognizing what's to be expected with the male anatomy and health disparities that may come along with it. I thought that was good. I didn't see anything inappropriate there. Lesson 2 addressed the female reproductive system. And again, really good job of defining and laying out the female anatomy. They discussed menstruation and health concerns related to female reproductive issues. So no concerns. And then lesson 3, hormones and sexual feelings. They promoted abstinence and even really expanded on health concerns related to sexually transmitted diseases. There was never any, it was always, the abstinence is better, responsibility, just kind of really, really like putting forward individual responsibility and decision-making. They express sexual feelings as a normal in this age group and responsibility in making good choices when addressing sex and reproductive health. As far as performance indicators, yes, HS 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.6, 1.8, personal and community health, PHS 1.2, 1.3, role development and sexual health responsibility, GHS 2.5, personal and community health, PHS 2.2, growth development, sexual health responsibility, GHS 4.3, mental, emotional, and social health, MHS 4.1, personal and community health, HS 5.1, growth development and sexual health responsibility, HS 6.1, growth development and sexual health responsibility, HS 7.1, personal community health, HS 7.1. Well, that was a P, sorry. PHS 7.1 and the other one was GHS 7. And then finally, growth, development, and sexual health responsibility, GHS 8.1.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Constance?
No concerns overall.
So next is Ms. Wanda. And she did module 3.
Yeah, module 4 maybe?
Oh, I lied. Yeah, module 4, thank you. I figured it out eventually. Which officially starts on page 19. For lesson 1, the commitment to marry, she said both parties must be ready for new responsibilities and challenges that do not exist in a dating relationship. And she talks about how they need to honestly evaluate themselves, including their goals for the future and for their relationships. Not sure. Oh, okay, this is all lesson 1. She said a good statement was, in the excitement of planning, they pay less attention to preparing themselves for the transition to becoming a married couple. There are challenges with good communication and compassion on pages 55, where 11 characteristics are outlined. Many have an increased change of building a lasting happy marriage examples, agree on important issues in the relationship, share similarities in family backgrounds, and have had a long period of close association prior to marriage. She said what was good was applying health skills, analyzing influences, which is one of our state and national standards. Describe family sitcom or drama on television. I'm assuming that's one of the activities. Does the show portray relationships between married couples and their children realistically? How do you think media relationships of marriage and family relationships influence views? I believe that's all for lesson 1. Lesson 2, becoming a parent. She says, before you read, list, describe some of the responsibilities of parenthood. Linked to a quick write. Write infant in the middle of the sheet of paper and circle it around the word, write down responsibilities that come to mind, connect these words and phrases to the center circle. She liked the 4 challenges, teen parent space, which is, I think it says escape, school, strength, relationship with girlfriend or boyfriend, prove they are an adult, female teen, want to be focused, teen pregnancy under the age of 15, baby's likely to have health problems. The teen mothers have an increased risk of medical complications while, I think this is pregnant. And then she liked the 10 good questions to ask before deciding to become a parent on page 61. Apply the health skills of advocacy, create a pamphlet that presents teens with the benefits of avoiding pregnancy. As far as performance indicators under standard 2, she said that GHS 2.4 was in her part that she reviewed, and that's the only thing that she has checked off.
What was that again?
2.4. 2.GHS 2.5. Excuse me, did I say 4?
I don't know,
Okay.
but I got it now.
Okay. All right, so that is module 4. And then we're on to module 5, which is Miss Caitlin, who is joining us online.
Hello, let me turn my camera on for a second. Okay. So I thought that it was very like informative. It was very science-based with just kind of describing everything that goes on without any imposing opinions or like trying to steer, anybody in any direction, which I think is good. It kind of covered all of the like, before the baby is born, like taking care of the mom aspect, which I thought was really good because if a high school student does become pregnant, I feel like that part is maybe like not thought about as much. Like they're worried about, this baby and what they're going to do once baby's born. But I think the taking care of themselves to also take care of the baby while they're pregnant was a big thing. And they covered a lot of that. I thought it was very age appropriate for a kid that could potentially be in this situation and just to, give the knowledge to, students in this age range. It was aligned, I would say, pretty directly with the state standards in terms of kind of what needs to go on or what needs to be taught for them to know. And I just think it was really informative. All three of the lessons kind of covered like every aspect you could imagine. And the indicators that I selected were GHS 1.6, GHS 1.7, GHS 2.5, and I think that was it.
Thank you. Any questions for Caitlin? All right, Miss Cindy, we're back to you. Sexuality and gender, which is module 6.
Lesson 1, contraception, page 29 out of 42. The good reasons for avoiding teen pregnancy and STDs, sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. Those are good reasons for not getting pregnant and for avoiding STDs are given. There was a comprehensive coverage of the types of contraception, good graphics, and the textbook does define abortion. Lesson 2, gender identity and sexual orientation, page 30. Nicely worded definition of gender transition, stressing the need for therapy first. Inclusive mindset and sexual orientation sections were very diplomatic. And then lesson 3, sexual abuse and violence, page 31 of 42. This section strongly states that sexual abuse is the fault of the abuser, never the victim. Helpful information on the role of the bystander. Excellent section on sexual harassment, which was clear and concise. Good section on how to reduce your risk of rape, and also helpful section on internet safety and how to avoid date rape. Since young people are on the internet or on a screen at some point quite often, that I thought those were very helpful. As far as the standards, GHS 1.3, GHS 1.4, GHS 2.3, GHS 5.1, GHS 6.2, GHS 7.1. Go back.
Yeah.
Go too fast.
You said, GHS 5.1.
And then 6.2, 7.1, 8.1.
Any questions for Miss Cindy? Thank you. And we are now to Dr. Pierce. He has STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, excuse me. He is reviewing the sexually transmitted diseases module. Pardon me.
Don't make me.
Which is module 7.
Okay, so sexually transmitted diseases, module 7, I do not have a page.
That's okay.
So the text is very comprehensive, very appropriate, and I believe necessary. High school students in 2024. There's photos are well done. And to be honest, the whole section, if someone reads it and pays attention to it, I think that it provides a realistic idea of the potential danger of unprotected sex in today's world, and for many, I believe it will hopefully be an appropriate deterrent to risky sexual behavior. I thought it was very well done. It will have the added benefit of helping teens recognize that if they have sexual activity and they should have a discharge of pain, rash, that if they've read this, then, hopefully that will help them understand that early treatment is useful and appropriate. I think the section hopefully will help them understand that. There's also a good discussion about HPV and cancer risk, a good discussion about the permanent effects of herpes and syphilis and HIV and more. And there is also a section that discusses the potential for hepatitis B or C being a sexually transmitted disease, but it also drove home the point with a good photograph that hepatitis can be spread through dirty needles, which should get the attention of those who choose to get tattoos. So I believe that the lesson was really good. I did not feel that it stands over many standards that were covered. Do you want me to list the standards I have?
Yep.
All right.
Please.
So the ones that I felt were covered were GHS 1.3, benefits of abstinence, in GHS 1.5, which is describing sexually transmitted diseases. PHS 1.3, the prevention and treatment of chronic disease. And then GHS 2.1, GHS 2.4, MHS 2.3, GHS 3.1. That's it.
I do have a question. When it talked about modes of transmission, how specific did it get as far as modes of transmission? Did it just say by unprotected sexual intercourse, or did it say specifically whether it was vaginal?
We did not discuss.
Same-sex partner
vaginal
versus-
or things like that.
Thank you, anytime. That's why you keep me here. Sorry, sir. Humbling.
I don't think that it discussed that very well.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, Dr. Pierce, we're gonna continue on and you'll review module 8, HIV/AIDS.
Okay, on HIV, it states the dangers and the ease of transmission of the virus, but it also, I thought, appropriately discuss things where you do not need to worry about the transmission of the virus, which includes public toilets. I mentioned a number of other things as well. The text, the photos, and videos in this section, I thought were good. There is an excellent video on new treatments of HIV, and I think that that's basically what I have to say about that. So as far as the standards, GHS 1.5, PHS 1.3, GHS 2.4. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Dr. Pearson? Okay, so we are now going to the textbook. And we're going to module 6, skills for a healthy relationship. This was Miss Wanda's section. So let me pull it up here. Skills for healthy relationships. All right. Oh, this one's tied up. So it's like triple looking. I know, I'm like slacking. My mind's not this fancy. All right, so lesson 1, which is page 42 of the student edition. She said there was a good video of a teen and a stepmom with conflicts. And then it shows them, I guess, having family counseling. It did an exercise beforehand, KWL, which is what you know, what you want to know, and then what you learned. It linked the definition of friendship as a significant relationship between two people that is based on trust, caring, and consideration. She liked that it's stated good friends benefit your health and that they can boost your self-esteem and help you resist harmful behaviors. She thought there was good verbiage for healthy dating relationships are built on respect. Also that be part of a strong community. It has a positive impact on every aspect of your life. She thought there were good pointers on traits of a healthy relationship, mutual respect, caring, honesty, commitment. It takes work to maintain a healthy relationship. She liked the 3 skills of communicating, cooperation, and compromise. She liked that it described 3 different ways you might communicate with someone. She said a special note, compromise. You should not compromise in things that really matter to you, like your values and beliefs. Know when it's appropriate to compromise and when to stand your ground. A question was asked, do you remember the 6 traits of good character? She suggested providing a note to refer back to which module that was listed in for, because it wasn't in module 6. She liked on page 42, the diagram that illustrated the many overlapping roles that teens play, what different roles you play in your life, at home, at school, and in your community. Lesson 1. Lesson 2, respecting yourself and others, begins on page 43. The main idea was bullying. She thought there was an excellent video on cyberbullying. She liked the T-chart activity at the beginning of self-respect and respect for others, where you fill in the column of how you can show respect and the type of respect that can improve that relationship. She felt that there was the real life issues report for 2020. 20% of this team said that they had been bullied, 15% cyberbullied, and 4% were afraid of attack or harm. She questioned how often do these statistics get updated now that it's 2024. The numbers are unfortunately much higher in her opinion. It was good to give the stopbullying.gov website. She thought it would be a good exercise to apply the health skill of advocacy, where you would brainstorm a list of ways that students can demonstrate good citizenship at school. Based on the ideas, create a flyer encouraging students to be good citizens of the school and community. Being clear about your relationships can help strengthen your relationships. She liked the paragraph on prejudice, which was an unfair opinion or judgment, and defining stereotypes and exaggerated or oversimplified belief about people, i.e. boys like sports, and gender stereotypes. disrespectful behavior. And then basically just the definition of bullying, cyberbullying and hazing, the picture, how you feel if you were facing the bullying in the picture, I guess referring to the picture in the lesson. And it could open up a dialogue with students who may be being bullied. The effects of bullying on a person. And she said it was of special note, the on-the-spot strategies were good ideas. Under the reading check, describing why it was important to pay attention to a friend's response to your joke. That teens need to understand how words and jokes can be taken as bullying. She said she liked some of the ways if someone sees someone being bullied that they can possibly do. Sure. That means that's how it's written, so. Teens should ask if your school has a zero tolerance policy for bullying and cyberbullying. This is to apply even off of the school property. And just as a side note, as a Beaufort County employee, we do a lot of that. And I believe last week was Unity Week around bullying, and we did school-wide stuff and activities.
Wednesday was orange.
Yes, we wore orange on last Wednesday. She has a question, is it zero tolerance? Yeah, so I just answered that. She liked if students would do this, writing critically, persuasively, write an editorial about the problem of bullying in schools. Your article should encourage students to help create a positive climate in which bullying is not tolerated. And then she lastly put, there was a list of teens who are bullied, may experience 6 effects. She can personally vouch to that they may want to commit harm to themselves. This bullying is to be taken with zero tolerance, and the schools and actions to remedy to be taken immediately. For all who are involved, parents must become accountable and involved, especially those who are doing it. And then lesson 3.
Yes,
Yes.
so when they cited the data, what was the data from here? I'm really interested because I'm thinking about now we have a state policy. We have a state policy against phones in schools,
Right.
and I'm wondering. if-
Oh, yeah. Well, so in the
Correlation.
text,
Yes.
in the
that's what I
text,
was listening.
it has a report from 2020. I could go back.
Okay,
See if I can find it real quick. Oh, just browsing.
I mean, just even for ourselves to pull the data from that year and see where it is at the end of this year. To
Yes.
see the impact.
Yeah,
If-
so
yes,
according to the National Center for Education Statistics, 20% of teens said that they had been bullied at school during the school year. 15% of teens reported being cyberbullied. And 4% reported they were afraid of attack or harm. And that's on page 43 of the high school text. Want to refer back to it. All right, lesson 3, communicating effectively, which was page 44 of the student edition. The spotlight video, 1,000 teens were surveyed. Parents got a D or F for failing teens to stop smoking and drinking. D as a listener. On the other side, parents got A+, but the teen would not tell their parent if they were right. So I'm not really understanding all of that, but that's how she wrote it, so I don't want to assume anything. A key to building relationships, real life issues, a pushy friend always wants things their way. Possible good exercise to write a letter to a friend and let them know how their pushy behavior makes you feel and how you want to have a say in what they do. She liked the Create Word Web for written effective communication. She thought it was good that there were 3 styles of communication: aggressive, passive, and assertive communication. She liked the main idea, learn speaking skills, listening skills, and nonverbal communication, and using iMessages puts the focus on your feelings rather than someone else's behavior. good visual and questions on page of the picture on page 44, which teens in the photo would say, which teen in the photo would you say is communicating assertively? How can you tell? The chart on the U messages and I messages. She liked that. List 5, possible active listening skills was good. Well noted the nonverbal communication, their tone of your voice, for example, and your body language. And then offering constructive feedback can improve your relationship with others. She references the assessment on page 45 for lessons 1, 2, and 3. She thought they were excellent review of what the students had learned. And then for standards, she has under standard 2, injury prevention and safety, IHS 2.1. Personal and community health, PHS 2.2. Under standard 3, she has growth, development, and sexual health and reproductive responsibility, GHS 3.3. Under standard 4, growth, development, and sexual health and responsibility, GHS 4.1. Mental, emotional, social health, MHS 4.1. That is all she has. Any questions? All right, word to me. Yay. Which is module 7, family relationships. So it starts on page 47. Lesson 1, it talked about healthy family relationships. The graphic on page 48 is not accurate. One of the words in the health triangle is in, oh, well, now of course it's going to make me laugh. Well, when I did it early during my thing, it didn't say physical, so I don't know, maybe they changed it. But I thought the video was very old. It's from the BBC, which I found odd for an American textbook.
A lot of them had a British accent.
But it's very old and out of date, which I think, you know, we were talking earlier, I think just teenagers being teenagers and where their brain development is. I think as soon as you show something old, which I would say it's probably early to mid 90s, they're gonna, it completely discredits it on, according to a teenage minded person. It does mention in the video about sexual relations, and drugs. So, just make you aware of that. But otherwise, I felt like the information on what a healthy relationship is, and the health triangle, which they start in the middle school curriculum with this text. And so it's nice to see it carried through to the high school as well and have that consistency. Lesson 2, strengthening the family relationships. It mentions, the video mentions drugs and suicide. So again, just being aware of that, especially for our students who are sensitive, either having experienced it from a family member or having challenges with their own mental health. Lesson 3 talked about health for families. It talks about domestic violence, sexual abuse, and violent relationships, and just violence in the home. Again, I feel like being sensitive to those students that may experience those things that we don't know about and that we do know about, and just being prepared to help those students in your class while you're teaching that material.
Mary,
Yeah,
so will we be able to produce maybe a letter or something that schools could use with regard to that unit to define that it is sensitive material and we are required by law to teach, but there may be some sensitive material and reference as any student
yeah.
right to a school council. I'm just putting that hat on, that if a complaint came into a principal, did we do that in advance?
I think it can also be like a footnote on the paper that goes home to
Yes.
tell the parents in the first place. We also want to make sure you're aware of.
Yeah,
And we
et cetera,
can give-
yeah, and that we let the teachers know
Topics
in
covered,
advance.
yes.
Yes, and any concerns that need to be discussed with the counselor or whatever we can do to.
That'd be the same for the bullying information.
Yes.
Yeah, not just,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll just have to highlight those topics and put them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe
Right,
let the
verbiage.
teachers know in advance that we will repeat with Emily to say, should you note, just note that we could send, quietly a notice something to the school counselor. Because sometimes I may not want to go because you'll chastise me, but you could read body language of students.
I've also had an experience of like, a student being transferred to another school because of an incident that had happened, and she was, obviously very sensitive to the topics, so, and didn't want everybody to know.
Sure.
Yeah, so I definitely get it. So that was pretty much.
One more question.
Oh, yes,
I
Dr.
apologize.
Stratus, go ahead.
With the older video, that's one of the things for your consideration. Because a student may get disenfranchised from the content. But to look for an alternate video, we either make a recommendation or the recommendation is to remain with that video. Because
Well,
to me, it's a state adopted material. I just wanted to put that.
So
language
to
in.
piggyback on the dated video, I also felt like the video was not diverse. It depicted one demographic of family, and didn't show a diverse and
So-
talking about
And I
different
think what
topics.
we can do is also with the standards that we're not covering effectively. We can also look at videos, but they have to be brought back to the committee again before we add those as supplemental. But I think it's a
Right,
great
that's where
idea.
I'm going.
Yep,
Missy,
because we're gonna
yes.
create our own kind of thing based on the state.
Or maybe the
adopted
publisher
resources.
has something that's an updated link that has already been, that was a big maybe, was it?
Yes, okay,
vetted in some way.
yes.
Okay.
Because the teacher's gonna do it independently. I'm just trying to get ahead of what an educator may do in the classroom.
Correct.
Right,
And making
okay.
sure that what we're showing and talking and discussing about is appropriate and follows the guidelines, and
See,
if
yes,
everybody's doing the same thing,
yes,
then there's no surprises.
yes.
I need you all to speak up because they can't hear you online. It's okay.
Sorry.
That's
Well, thank you. Nobody's ever said that of me. All right, as far as performance indicators, under standard 1, GHS 1.8. Injury prevention and safety, IHS 1.2, specifically where it talks about dating violence and spousal abuse.
IHS, what was that?
IHS 1.2. Under standard 2, GHS 2.3. GHS 2.7, again specifically sexual abuse. Under injury prevention and safety, IHS 2.1. Mental, emotional, and social health, MHS 2.3. And then under personal and community health, PHS 2.1. For standard 3, GHS 3.2. GHS 3.3. Under standard 4, GHS 4.3. And then that was it. So that brings us to peer relationships. Which starts on page 53. And so, I didn't bring my sheet, just do something. Just basically the importance of peer relationships and how friends should encourage you. What is a friendship? What does that look like? And I really liked how they had the attributes of friendship, which I believe is also what Ms. Glaze also had in her supplemental material. And the pictures in here were a little bit more diverse, but it talks about differentiates between casual and close friendships. A platonic friendship goes into depth on online friendships. And then building strong friendships. And it talks about the characteristics of those and gives good definitions and asks questions to help you answer those questions about empathy, fairness, shared interests, shared values, acceptance, support, and loyalty. How to recognize concerns and problems in friendships with things such as cliques and being exclusive of others. Managing your feelings of envy and jealousy in your friendships, and when your friendship changes, how to deal with that, and reasons for choosing to end a friendship, why that might be important. It again goes into iMessages and what that means, and explaining your feelings and your reasons for the friendship ending. So that was lesson 1. Lesson 2 talks about peer pressure and refusal skills. And I felt like it gave a great definition of peer pressure, in that recognizing that there could be positive and negative impacts for peer pressure. So peer pressure doesn't always have to be a negative thing. So I thought that that was really important to point out. And then, because I think, side note, as a teacher, I try to do that with some of my students, right? If I have a challenging student making bad decisions, I may purposely pair them with a kid who will help them make a little bit more positive choices. Negative peer pressure talked about harassment, which they define as persistently annoying behavior such as name calling, teasing, or bullying. And then it also talks about manipulation and talks about things like making threats, blackmail, mocking or teasing, putting people on guilt trips, bargaining, flattering, and bribery. And how to resist negative peer pressure. And it goes over refusal skills, which I like. It's very similar to the refusal skills with dating, same steps, same verbiage, but it's in a non intimate relationship kind of a way. So it just kind of reinforces it outside of a relationship. It talks about common methods for manipulation, goes on a little bit more detail. And then passive and aggressive responses, which I thought was interesting, just because, you know, I think a lot of times too, like their attitude and body language, and just being aware of that, not necessarily in a disciplinary manner, you know, like don't take that tone with me, but having them recognize their tone is important in how they communicate with people. And then lastly, practicing, is that right? Practicing abstinence. Let's see. So it talks about dating decisions and what are your priorities, focusing on school, or spending time with your family. What are your priorities? Talks about goal setting, and just as a general, just to get kids to start thinking about what their priorities are. a nice blurb about setting limits, and talking about a process being a series of actions geared toward an end result, which I thought was, also good for them, realizing that, you know, it is a process. It's not gonna be like you draw your line in the sand and that's it, you know, like it's, working on how to use those refusal skills and setting those limits. It goes into abstinence. Again, it explains intimacy, infatuation, self-control, talks about setting limits, communicating with your partner, talking to a trusted adult, seeking low-pressure dating situations, and someone who respects and shares your values. So I felt like it was a nice segue from friendship into a more intimate relationship. Talks about sexual activity and consent, and gave a real world connection of what we see on TV versus what reality is. Some suggestions and pointers for how to avoid risky situations. And then also considering the consequences, which a lot of times our teenagers don't think about what could happen as an end result. And really the main idea was abstinence from sexual activity has a positive effect on all sides of your health triangle. So again, taking them back to that health triangle that they started the unit on, and then the effects on your physical health, such as STDs, STIs, unplanned pregnancy, and it goes into a little bit of detail. It also talks about the effects of on your mental, emotional health and social health, which I think a lot of times, since those aren't as tangible, we don't necessarily always think about those, but really pointing out, you know, how choosing to not be abstinent, you know, peers may not want to be friends with you, or you become tagged as something you're not, or whatever, and just mental, emotionally dealing with it, and then the effects on your social health, which I think are really important. And then it talks about making that commitment to abstinence, having that honest communication with your dating partner will help you stay committed to abstinence, and just the importance that you are communicating that and having those conversations, that you're with somebody who's on the same page as you and why that's important. And using your refusal skills. It also, which I like, talked about recommitting to abstinence. So for a teen who may have not been abstinent with one person or one time, and feeling like, well, now I have to all the time because I have once before, and just recommitting to that abstinence. So I liked that that gave them kind of a, I did this and I regret it, and, you know, doesn't mean I have to be like that all the time. Gave some good suggestions for, you know, pressure lines, such as like, everybody does it, I thought you were cool, no one will know, and things that you can say, which I think is good, because I think a lot of times
That's
our
pretty
kids,
practical
Yeah.
application.
yeah, our kids, you know, in the heat of the moment may not have that comeback. And again, side note, as a health teacher, right, like we have kids do role plays and think of things ahead of time, so that when they're in that situation, they're not like in a panic and not able to communicate. Okay, so this checked a lot of boxes. So GH 1.1. What is the GH 1.5. Sorry, I'm having to redo this on the fly. Standard 2, GH 2.1. GH 2.3, GH 2.4, GH 2.5. Under injury, prevention and safety, IHS 2.1. PHS 2.1. For standard 3. It's not one, standard 4. GH 4.1, GH 4.2, GH 4.3, IHS 4.1, MHS 4.1. Under standard 6, GHS 6.1, and GHS 6.2. GHS 7.1 under standard 7. MHS 7.3, MHS 7.4. I was hesitant on the PHS 7.1, which talks about implement a long-term personal wellness plan to maintain and improve a healthy practice and behaviors. It does talk about creating a plan for abstinence. It's not a full as what I would think of when you say a long-term personal wellness plan, but it does have them thinking about setting a goal for themselves when it comes to abstinence in their sexual activity. So I don't feel like the lesson fully covers that standard, but I do feel like it touches on that standard, if that makes sense. So I just put a little thing there. And so that was module number 8. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
A recommendation and if the standard is required, then we come forward with recommended material to review to go to the depth of the standard, or is it sufficient of what is provided?
So,
And this is about as loud as I can get, Robin. It's been a long, I apologize.
so I don't know that there would be one lesson that would maybe cover that entire standard, meaning that when we do physical activity, for example, nutrition and physical activity, you might do another component of a long-term wellness plan around your nutrition and physical activity.
Gotcha.
This one's
Gotcha.
specific, so.
We just need to be explicit with when we're covering that standard, how are we
Right.
doing it
Right.
and through the different components.
If that makes sense. Okay, I'm also doing module 9. Which is resolving conflicts and preventing violence. All right, so lesson 1 was causes of conflict. Knowing why conflicts occur can help prevent them. It does have them do a little cause and effect, which I think can easily be linked into some of your other content areas, which would be nice for some interdisciplinary connections there. It just does talk about the different types of conflict, whether it's an interpersonal conflict or an internal conflict. And I think that is important because I think our kids do internalize a lot of stuff.
Especially middle school.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So, anywho, and then, is this normal? Am I normal? That kind of stuff. It talks about common causes as far as like power struggles, personal loyalties, jealousy and envy. And this sounds a lot like the friend relationships, kind of revisit some of this stuff, property disputes, conflicting attitudes and values, and then lack of respect. And so the conflicting attitudes and values, I think, is a good opportunity because you can kind of tie in some bullying in there and how, when we don't agree with people, how we respond or what we may say. And so I think that's a great opportunity for conversation. in the classroom. It defines what escalating is, which I think is good to talk about how, you know, I see it in middle school a lot, right? Like kids just start horse playing and then somebody takes it a different way and then it escalates into something completely different. And so, and the one kid's like, oh, we were just playing. We were friends yesterday. Yeah, we'll be friends tomorrow. Results of conflict, and how, what can happen and how to prevent it. And that is pretty much lesson 1.
So is it possible, listening to the bullying,
Mike?
is it possible listening to the bullying and conflict to maybe, as we go into next year, align this with the month of October, as well as school counselors coming into the classroom? Because not all teachers are going to have the skill set to discuss these conflict resolution. And it should be a unified practice that is a school-wide practice, right? You want the same messaging to happen to each one of your classes.
Across the board, exactly.
Yes, so maybe something, what do you think, Ms. Vogt?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Well,
Just
and
keep that alignment.
these are similar units to what is taught in middle school as well. So this is high school, so we could easily do that on
But we can emphasize.
Yes.
This is October for
October's,
everyone.
yeah.
They also do Red Ribbon in October, and that's alcohol and other drugs, so that all ties
It all
together.
ties-
Yeah.
Ties in.
I think a uniform front is what we're saying. I think across the board, I think that's much needed and be appreciated. That will help be the driving force of what we're all asking for.
Keep the messaging the same.
Same.
Well, and then the onus isn't on the health teacher. It's a school-wide, district-wide approach.
Right.
And so,
And we want to look at that vertical piece too.
Yeah.
So that we're not.
duplicating. Yep. Yay. All right. The next lesson is resolving conflicts. And this just goes a little bit more in depth than what the little paragraphs were in previous lessons. So this one specifically is how to respond to conflict, that there are various ways to deal with a conflict. It talks about compromise, effective negotiation, and the negotiation process, and it gives 7 steps for the negotiation process, which I think is important for kids to kind of learn too. Again, this is high school kids, so you know, not just negotiation for conflicts in a friendship, but these are kids that are starting to venture out into the workforce in some capacity, and they're looking to, you know, what they want to do as a career path down the road, and you know, negotiating those types of things. It mentions again the I messages, so they're hearing I messages again, and so again reinforcing that. How to prepare for negotiation, that you don't just do it on the fly, that you choose a time and place and you have these conversations, and that it's not something that just happens, it's purposeful, which I think is also important. It talks about checking your facts. So, you know, I think that could be a fun, like, hey, let's fact checker what our friends are saying. And then plan what you want to say, thinking about what you want to say, and the consequences of just saying whatever you want and then, you know, having the harmful effects if it doesn't come out right. Gives tips for successful negotiation. It talks about mediation and the difference between doing your own negotiation versus getting a mediator. And talks about making sure your mediator has neutrality, confidentiality, and well-defined ground rules. Again, I think that also reinforces setting boundaries and with things that you've already talked about. It talks about peer mediation and how you can do it with a peer versus having a trusted adult. Again, establishing ground rules, hearing each other's side, exploring solutions, and then wrapping it up. And then the neutrality of having that. And it's a planned activity, not something that's just done like, hey, you come here, let's have this conversation. So that is lesson 2. Lesson 3 moves into understanding violence and knowing about the different forms of violence and ways to protect themselves. It first starts with what causes violence and goes into detail about that. Talks about alcohol and drug use, how it can play a role. That studies have found that alcohol in particular plays a role in many violent crimes. And there's several possible reasons for this connection, and it lists all those reasons. Talks about people might have mental emotional problems, whether it be low self-esteem and feeling insecure, to other more significant things like stress, depression, and strong emotions such as anger that can make people become violent. It also talks about availability of weapons. It does give data in here, but the data is from 2017. So these kids were in elementary school when that data was relevant to them. So, getting some updated information on that. It does talk about violence in the media. And I feel important here to stress not just that it doesn't just stress like what you see on TV and in the movies or YouTube or TikTok or whatever, but it also talks about song lyrics and video games. And so I think that's really important because I don't know if you've listened to the music that the kids listen to or any of their video games. They're, quite violent. It does talk about gang violence and youth gangs and what that means. And that to be called a gang means that you're engaged in violent activity. And so it also makes a real world connection about violence among teens. However, the chart goes from 1993 to 2017. It's on page 62 if you want to look up. So again, I don't know how, so I don't know how, I'm sure there's some more up-to-date options for us. Next, it goes into the types of violence, the difference between assault and homicide, sexual violence, sexual assault, rape, and so how to avoid those, how to respond to those. Then it does go into dating violence. And so now we're getting into the Aaron's Law components. And then, I didn't see anything that really kind of stood out as other than the fact that that content is covered. So it's important for us to focus on that. Then it gets into hate crimes with harassment, vandalism, arson, assault, and homicide, and what that means. And again, I think that's another way to tie into the Bullying and Unity Day when we start talking about hate crimes. So that was that lesson. And then next we are on to preventing and overcoming abuse. Abuse can cause physical, mental, emotional damage. And so it talks about abuse in a relationship, and that's just a general relationship. It doesn't have to necessarily be a sexual one, but it does mention sexual mistreatment and sexual activity in here. Talks again about the forms of abuse: physical, emotional, verbal, and sexual, and stalking. Protecting yourself from abuse. And then it goes into date rape and acquaintance rape pretty significantly, how to protect yourself. And again, this is similar to, I don't know if it was did you go over rape or would you, I thought somebody had already gone over date rape. Yeah. So again, it's just being brought up again, so a reinforcement. And strategies, simple things like don't leave your drink unattended, don't take drinks from people you don't know, don't drink your drink if it smells or tastes weird, that's kind of stuff. It does give some myths and reality about date rape and how to prevent it. And so I thought that was a good conversation to just have with the students, that how date rape almost always happens between people who have just met each other or don't know each other well. That was the myth. The reality is it's common for a person to be raped by someone she or he has been dating for a long time.
You can tie that back into some of the earlier content that talks about safety of group dates
Yes,
and doing things in a group
Right.
instead of a couple.
right.
As far as different types of pressure.
It also talks about alcohol, drugs, and date rape. So a lot of these are coming back and, you know, we're combining other units where we talk about alcohol and how, and we're linking them together. I'm going to assume that in those units as well, it may mention some of the things that it's mentioning here. This goes into, Rohypnol specifically, as well as ketamine.
Which they would call roofies.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and it says that on here.
Okay.
Yep. And so, anywho, they talk about people getting drugs. Avoiding date rape, it gives you quite a few tips, like 7 or 8 tips on how to avoid it, how to overcome abuse, and it emphasizes counseling can help survivors of abuse recover from its effects, and what help is available to survivors. And the importance of talking about your experience in a safe, supportive environment is the best way to move toward healing. And then it gives sources for people to go and seek support, which I think is important as well, because again, we may have that kid sitting in our class that doesn't feel comfortable to say anything or is going, oh my gosh, that's happened to me. This means I've now experienced this. What does that mean? And, you know, again, opening up those doors for them, and then then giving them a resource of people they can go and talk to is, I think, is important. It also talks about help for the abusers, and that the victim is not the only one that needs help. So, you know, again, the opposite side, right? You got a kid sitting in your class and they're going, oh my gosh, I did that. Or, you know, oh, we were drinking and, you know, I don't know, did I do that or did I not? Like, you know, so I feel like that's an important little life lesson for them as well. And giving them some help and letting them know it's not about bashing them or blaming them, or, you know, and that they don't have to be, now that they see themselves that way, they don't have to be that way for the rest of their life. They can change. So that is module 9. Any questions? I feel like I just, all right, so for standards or performance indicators, I don't think we really have, well, IHS 1.2. I don't think it specifically mentions here the laws relating to sexual conduct as minors for the state of South Carolina, but I do think this is a place where we can add it in. And so that would be where, like, when you're teaching that unit about the rape and the date rape, that might be a perfect time to talk about, well, in the state of South Carolina, the laws relating to sexual conduct of minors includes da 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 da. I just think that's another place for us to add it in. PHS 1.2. I think under standard 2, GHS 2.1. GHS 2.2. GHS 2.3. Again, with the GHS 2.6, I felt like that was another area when you're talking about use of technology and making yourself susceptible, especially with sex trafficking,
Dark web.
yeah, that sort of
Okay.
stuff. Yeah. GHS 2.7. Bless you.
Thank you.
IHS 2.1. MHS 2.3. PHS 2.1. Under standard 3. GHS 3.2. And GHS 3.3. Under standard 4, GHS 4.1, GHS 4.2, GHS 4.3, IHS 4.1, and then MHS 4.1. Under standard 5, DHS 5.1. GHS 5.1. It didn't really have them create a plan under standard 6, the GHS 6.2. It didn't really have them create a plan for communicating personal boundaries, but you definitely talked about it. So again, that would be another one of those, like, I think that we would just want to make sure that we emphasized and maybe pulled it out through whatever we decide as a supplement or whatever. Standard 7, GHS 7.1, MHS 7.3, MHS 7.4. And then I think under standard 8, MHS 8.1. Any questions? It was a lot. It was a lot. That was a big one. All right, so we should be to 10. No, I lied. 16.
Yep.
Which is Miss Cindy and the endocrine system. Okay.
And this was with the interactive student edition. Lesson 1, the endocrine system, page 106, 107 of 231. The video was a roller coaster, which was talking about the endocrine system and the hormones and things that can make your body change at different times, and it had a British accent again. It showed an analogy of puberty like a roller coaster. Covered endocrine glands, pituitary glands, lobes, adrenal glands. There was a nice graph of the endocrine system with each gland explained on page 106, which was good. Lesson 2, the male reproductive system on page 107. Another video with a British accent. I noticed in this one, the people in this video were not teenagers, they were young adults. And through the narration, the video ends with a man facing prostate cancer. I think basing that on fear tactics is a poor choice for teenagers, because they're gonna say, oh, only older men get prostate cancer, no matter what boys age 15 and up can get testicular cancer, but for prostate cancer, I thought that was a poor choice. And there's a good list on maintaining reproductive health, and there were good graphics and vocabulary, but I didn't really appreciate that video. And then lesson 3, the female reproductive system, page 108. Video again was with a British voice. It was colorful and had good graphics. And in this section, lesson 3, there was a good chart on the menstrual cycle. And they did also cover breast self-exam with a graphic that explained how to do a breast self-exam, which I thought was really good. This particular module 16 was very science-based. I read the standards over and over, and I could only find 2 that loosely were covered by this module. So I would say under growth, development, and sexual health and responsibility, GHS 1.2. And growth, development, and sexual health and responsibility, standard 6, GHS 6.1. Talking about SMART goals, and that was all I could find that would pertain to this particular module.
There was also a question online about why we would be upset about the British. I have my opinion, but I'll let you, since you brought it up, this is your.
Well, I just wondered, were there no companies in America that made video? Like, that's all. It wasn't a slam of anything British. It's just, it interested me that all of these derived from another country. That's all.
Yeah, and that's kind of my opinion too, is that Yeah, I mean, not that we don't have students with accents in our classes,
Right.
but, and I don't have a problem with it. No.
As long as.
No, and I'm just more curious, this is Elizabeth Hay. You know, we do have British people in the US, so is it that the videos originate from the UK? Or do we know or not know whether
I
those individuals could potentially be in the US?
You know what? It could be a little bit of both. I know for me personally, the first unit that I did, which was the family relationships, he is citing a BBC study and survey. And so for me, it wasn't that it was relevant to students here in the United States.
It also needs.
Okay. And I was just curious because I know many people who find British and Australian accents particularly melodious to listen to. And a lot of authors use those types of voices even on audiobooks. So I was just asking more out of curiosity since it was constantly referenced
I
that
don't
the
think
person was.
sources of the video, they just had the video implanted in the curriculum, so it was kind of hard to tell. Just interested me that there were multiple ones that were from another place.
So two questions. One, is the publishing company from the UK?
It's McGraw Hill,
Yeah, but they publish
all
globally.
over, yeah.
So there could be a subsidiary out of the UK. Hence,
Supplies.
right, that the supply came from, but my other question to that is, was the content or the context of the video old?
Yes. All of
See,
them, I think.
that's what I think would distract our children.
Yeah, more than the accent.
Well, not just that, but most children, if it's not contemporary, it's like, what are those people? Look at when this was done, right? That's a teenage lens at times.
Yeah, and I agree with Dr. Stratos. Like, you can tell when you're watching a video, whether it's from the 80s or the 90s, for example, and our kids would think like, oh, this is irrelevant. What do they know about my struggles or what I'm feeling or experiencing?
And that I think is, we've all kind of expressed that that's our concern, that the majority of the videos that we have seen are not current.
Right, you're not gonna.
They're- yeah. And yeah,
Or AKA, like someone say, relatable.
yeah,
And that's the most important thing. That's a very key catchphrase is that you want the video to be relatable so that you can galvanize the students' attention.
And to have the type of depth of work that you're doing here. And to have it, if something's gonna distract.
Right.
Maybe we could find something that may not, that's all. Because you put in a lot of work on review and looking at alignment. So, to keep that credibility. I think I'm allergic to work.
we've been here too long. All right. Thank you, Miss Cindy. And now we're moving to Miss Constance. She has modules 17 and 18.
Okay. So, module 17 is, covering the beginning of the life cycle. And just to kind of piggyback off of Cindy, it's very scientific, so I am not gonna be we're not gonna be in depth. Because we'll be here all day if I did that. So lesson 1, is covering prenatal development and care. There's a very nice embryonic fetal development chart in this lesson, so that it breaks down by trimester, the stages of development in fetal embryos and fetuses. So that was helpful. And I always think that pictures and charts are they're like $1 million because you don't really have to spell it out. They can just see it and they'll remember it, right? There was mention of prenatal care. I almost missed it. And I know that was we brought it up.
Yes, and postnatal.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a win. They discussed complications of pregnancy. and all the way up through stages of labor and perinatal care. So no concerns, very astute and to the point. These chapters were short too. I like that. All right, lesson 2, heredity and genetics. I believe the authors or publisher or whatever, they did a good job of making word choices appropriate for the age group. This topic, I'm sure, is very, very difficult to understand for most adults. So they discuss physical characteristics and genetics related to inherited traits or disorders. They discuss genes and sex, meaning like XY chromosomes and what makes you what you are physically. Those were the main points that stuck out in my mind in, reading and reviewing. And finally, lesson 3 was birth through childhood. And it really focused on the stages of development from birth through young childhood, tasks or milestones that children usually meet based on their age group, and also preventative child health screenings to identify developmental delays that may need to be addressed.
I do have a question. When it talked about gender, because I'm just putting myself in a classroom, I know somebody's gonna ask. Is it talk anything about like, it's just matter of fact, you have 2 X's, you're female, XY, you're male?
Yep, and it did say that the male is the determinant of the sex of the child,
Okay,
but that's it.
That goes right with the biology.
right, well,
Yeah,
and
so
I think
that's-
about in middle
yeah.
school science too,
Yeah,
I think in
right
7th
line.
grade, they do genetics, yeah.
Right. Standards, right? So standards, I believe that were covered lightly, under standard 1, GHS 1.7 and GHS 1.8. It was a very short, and I didn't even mention the adoption one. Very short mention of when talking about prenatal care and things at the end of the chapter. It talked about the option for adoption for women that didn't want to go through with, parenting.
With pregnancy?
Parenting. Like
So
they
they-
didn't want to parent, like they chose adoption.
They
over-
chose to put their child
for
for
adoption.
adoption.
Oh, I'm
Didn't
sorry.
mention
I
Okay,
chose
I
the
got you.
child, but I was gonna raise.
Is there anything about if they didn't want the child and they didn't want to take it to term, there was not?
No. This seemed to be more geared towards a family environment, not a single. Like I said, it was a very small portion. Okay. Okay, standard 4. IHS 4.1. Did I mix up my? No, I didn't. And so communication, negotiation, collaboration skills, and establish promote healthy boundary behaviors. Oh, right. So I just thought about, the preventative measures that they discussed in pregnancy. There was some talk about complications and things like that. So it discussed healthy choices and behaviors, abstaining from drugs and alcohol things. And then standard 6, GHS 6.1. That was attending those prenatal appointments. And that is all. Standards for module 17. Module 18, we discussed, this is the life cycle continues. I don't know if we're gonna keep the kids' attention with this one.
Well said.
I don't know, it's just boring. But to wrap it up, lesson one, discuss changes during adolescence.
That's what an adolescent wants to hear.
Right. They talked about both gender changes, so like the physical changes, you know, what to expect. What I liked about, there was a discussion regarding physical maturity and not being an indication of sexual maturity. If you get what I'm saying, so it doesn't mean that you're ready for sexual type things, sexual type matters or discussions, activities, or readiness to parent. So I like that. They discussed emotional change, social changes, and they discussed diversity and cultural interests as it relates to all of these changes. So like you're gonna start to really interact with your peers and get to know what similarities and differences you have.
Now, when you talk about physical changes, was it more like preteen or now that they're?
Like the Tanner stages of development,
Okay.
underarm hair, breast tissue development, pubic hair development. It was just a little bubble.
But like I'm thinking like as a high school student, if I'm 14, 15 years old, I might have already seen those, and so. I don't know,
Or maybe not.
or maybe not, true,
And it's letting the student know that this was normal.
normal, yeah. Well, and they
That's a-
should have had it in middle school anyway.
And
But
it's not
how do you
pictures,
know?
it's
I
just
may
a
come
small.
from-
Correct, you may have moved here.
Transplant.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I hear you.
Hence, that's why they spiral.
Yeah.
We're not doing that for ELA anymore, but we'll do that.
Courses.
I'm assistant.
I said, bless the people who teach these courses.
guest lecture for me if you like.
So yeah, it makes a difference in females, breast development, waistline narrows, hips widen, body fat increases, menstruation starts. In males, facial hair pairs, voice deepens, shoulders broaden, muscles develop, hairline begins to recede. In both, body hair pairs, all permanent teeth grow in, perspiration increases.
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure it wasn't like lower than where they were, you know,
Oh, okay.
you know what I'm saying, like too elementary for a kid who's like 14, 15, 16 years old, and they go,
I think it's appropriate, like I'm thinking about my daughter, she's a late bloomer, and when if she saw this, she would be like, oh, okay, I'm different, you know?
yeah.
Right.
That's why I like to say puberty could be 12 to 18,
Right.
because many adolescents are
Well said.
thinking, am I normal?
Right.
Comparing
Yeah.
themselves to, to others. Yeah.
Right. Lesson 2, adulthood, marriage, and parenthood. Like this is where they're gonna get lost. They're gonna be like, what are you talking about? So the main point I liked was the teen parenting. They did talk about that. It seems like they're definitely not glorifying it at all. They talk about financial difficulties, emotional stress, limitations on social life, restrictions on educational career goals. So it's kind of a scare tactic, but hey, I don't know. I guess you can look at it both ways. So that's the main thing that I think stood out, and that would be something that, it could be a good, we're not trying to scare them, but definitely, not glorify. And, lesson 3, health through the life cycle. This is all about adulthood, guys. So physical, mental, social, emotional transitions. We're talking about like older adults where they're, empty nest syndrome and preventative health screenings, financial plannings towards, you know, your older age, public health policies and programs that they may have access to, so.
When you were under lesson 2, adulthood, marriage and parenthood, you know, this county is very fortunate to have the Parents as Teachers program. Every county in this state does not have that, and they are award winning. And, you know, if you're,
Just got their second,
I know,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
As we look at resources for these students that are local, that is a valuable resource. Because there may be a young girl sitting there in a class in this county that is either pregnant or is already a parent. And, you know, just to know that there's resources out there, I think is a positive thing for us.
Oh, standards. So that was it. Any questions with the content? I know it was short, but it really just didn't grab my attention. So I'm worried that the students are gonna either struggle with it or the teacher might not get really deep into it, you know? So standard 1, GHS 1.1. Standard 2, GHS 2.5. Standard 4, GHS 4.1. Standard 5, GHS 5.1. Standard 6, GHS 6.1, GHS 6.2. Standard 7, PHS 7.1, and standard 8, GHS 8.1.
All right, we're down to the final 2.
Really?
Yeah. Dr. Pierce is gonna cover the textbook modules 23 and 24, which cover communicable diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, and HIV/AIDS.
Okay, module 23 is communicable diseases, and I'm not going to go through all of these. They have a long list of important diseases that that are important for all of us to know about. And the majority of this I thought was extremely well done. It's going to help students understand, you know, the nature of communicable diseases, how the body fights diseases, treatment of diseases, and then new diseases that are developing. It goes over how the diseases are caused by a pathogen, and it's delivered into the body in various ways. It talks about viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and others. Talks about transmission of diseases via mosquitoes and ticks. Discusses contaminated food and water and how you can protect yourself. It also has a good section on the body's defense mechanism and the inflammatory response. There was an excellent video about influenza and how that differs from bacteria. The fact that, you know, antibiotics are not going to help in the treatment of influenza explains all that. There's another excellent video on MRSA, methicillin-resistant staph, and how that's become so prominent. And so that part is very modern and up to date.
Did it cover COVID?
That was gonna be my question.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you a minute.
Just wondering, you said a long list, so I just wondered.
So, but there was one video that is just wrong. And it's a video on meningitis C. And in the video, it talks about the fact that there is a vaccine for meningitis C, but not for the others. And in fact, you know, there is a new, I think they call it pentavalent vaccine that covers, meningitis, A, B, C, W, Y, and one other. And so it's a good vaccine that covers all of these, and that is available, and that is, contradictory to what the video says. And yes, it is a, British, video. So
it's not current.
I don't have anything against the British, it's just that, it is, and it's, it could be that, that it was accurate when it,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
in the nineties or whatever, but, it's certainly not, at this point. So the lesson, has a good discussion on pandemics, COVID, Ebola, and other diseases, as well. The discussion, you know, as we mentioned, does, talk about diseases obtained from contaminated water, E. coli, Giardia, and others. And so aside from, you know, the one inaccurate video, I thought that, it was, well done. So, as far as standards, you know, I don't have these in order, but it's, PHS 5.1. And then GHS 6.2. And then, yeah, I did have before. GHS 8.1. And then MHS 8. And then, going back to standard one, GHS 1.5 and PHS 1.3. Standard two is GHS 2.4. That's it. So that's that module on communicable diseases. And then we go over sexually transmitted diseases and HIV/AIDS again in module 24. And I can go through this one, you know, very quickly because I didn't have any issues with it. It discusses STDs in detail, how many are asymptomatic early, the dangers and consequences. Good video on the benefits of the HPV vaccine to help prevent cervical cancer. Excellent video on HIV and new treatment for HIV. So there's some of this we covered before, but this is another module that's going over again. I don't know that there was a lot new in this module. It's not covered. So, as far as standard, this one might be in order. Standard one, GHS 1.3, GHS 1.5, PHS 1.2, PHS 1.3, standard two, GHS 2.1, GHS 2.4, MHS 2.3, standard three, GHS 3.1, and GHS 4.3. And that is all.
All right, Gary. Any questions for Dr. Pierce? Okay, that concludes our initial review.
Do you want?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And I have the other ones.
Do you?
Okay, because I have the middle school ones too. Okay.
Robin, her name on all in case they got
Yeah,
whatever.
I got that.
How much of this is already within rule of thumb?
I'm sorry.
How much of this, no, that was, I'm asking Missy,
Okay.
how much is this, I'm building on what you brought to the table.
This particular section, we did not.
Okay. Because if there's repetition,
Yes,
if there's repetition, we could say, just leave the one in a unit, modules and don't have, because again, that's gonna create an issue for that teacher. But you did this in unit 17.
well, and we were talking about the amount of time that the health unit itself takes.
Yeah.
Itself, and then how long is it gonna take to do this? So yes, we've got to.
Well,
piece that all together.
So my understanding of all of this is, if I can get out of here. So we have multiple options, right? We have the Glencoe Health textbook, we have just the supplement, or we have the textbook with the supplement. So some of them are duplicates.
Okay,
So it depends on, as a committee, what we recommend. Do we recommend the textbook with the supplement, just the supplement, or just the textbook? Like, so I think that's why
And that's.
we went
one of
down
the-
this whole of,
to the depth.
yes.
I got you, thank you.
High school is what it is, online that we discussed. However, the middle school part of the thing is, since you've got two different pieces, you've got the health textbook and you've got the supplement. They do come together as one text. There's some discussion about sending back the help. I need to talk to people at state or have Emily do this. And then you get one version. So it would be much more simplified. It wouldn't be online because we adopted that particular version. So for middle school, it wouldn't be online. Which
And it would be
simplify.
one resource for the classroom.
That is correct.
Once it has all been confirmed from the health advisory count.
That is
committee,
correct.
Correct? Okay, just wanna, gotcha.
So I think right now, the next thing is just compiling everything. You've shared your concerns or your review of the modules, and so we'll move forward. I'll put all of this on one document, because we don't want a hard copy to share with board when we get to that point, just sharing our concerns and also your feedback on that, because I'd like for y'all to take another look at, you had concerns about one component in middle school portion. I need everybody to have their eyes on it too. So I want us to be ready to discuss that. So my thought process was to get this document together here within the next week. Between now and when we meet, come back ready to discuss so that we're not looking at things. You get to do it on your own time, at your leisure, reviewing just the concerns that the committee had for the middle school use. There's not much here for the high school concerns other than the videos. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory, that we'll probably want to make sure to use those and look at some other options.
So when you say come prepared for, just so I understand, we'll, as a committee, have a conversation of whether or not it should be included or excluded.
And some of the
or-
concerns, are
The
probably
committee
covered under
makes
the
a
law.
recommendation to the board.
Okay.
Yes,
And the board is the deciding factor.
Correct.
To be direct.
but I want us to
But you
all
can
be on the same
define
page
your
with exactly
recommendation.
what we've got. Yeah.
Did we go too fast for you, for all this that we?
Yeah.
Well, and I have the middle school already done. I've done a similar thing where I just took what was in here and kind of put it in a digital version so that,
No, tonight, I've
Okay.
got what I need, and it's mainly concerns.
Yeah.
And I've got other content standards coming, because that's another discussion
Yes.
that when we're looking at the curriculum itself, making sure that we're covering all that we need to cover. So, yeah, that's what we want. So you will receive information from me within the next week or Emily Greg about next steps. But I think we probably need to plan when the next meeting.
with our next meeting.
That should be close to the, summary.
So we want November, December.
When does the board want to be presented this
I
information?
know you were trying to get it done this semester.
Do it as
You
quickly as
mentioned that
possible.
a few months ago.
So for board meeting, there is a board meeting on the 12th, and then we have a work session on the 22nd. And then we only have one board meeting in December.
So I would say,
I think for the committee purpose, that December meeting, because of the work session.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to, I would have to go through, either way, it has to go on agenda anyway,
Right.
review.
Exactly,
So-
so.
well. So if we did, you said the board meeting is December 2nd?
No, the board meeting in December is December 10th.
I may not be in the area. I'm sorry. Which is not good. Because I know Dr. Arwood,
Yeah.
Right.
So then we
either 20,
need the,
So then it would need to be the 22nd at the work session if you're trying to have it done prior to the next semester.
and we're tentatively looking at the video that Dr. Pearson brought forward regarding it. Right, and then the updating of because they're saying there was no cure. And there is a, right, so that's 2 items.
that's just high school. This doesn't include the content that we had concerns about.
For the middle school.
Relating to the standards.
Yes.
And we would have to have. You either have to have the recommendation of update to the board at that time at the 26th. Or you use it as a platform,
22nd.
I'm sorry, the 22nd. Or you use it as a platform to communicate concerns. Now, put your board hat on, they're probably gonna want to hear recommendations as well.
So this is just me. If we have concerns and we're gonna present those to the board, would it be better to do it at a work session rather than in a public,
All meetings are public.
even the work sessions?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I just didn't know if time wise or, meeting
You have
wise,
more
which
time
one
at
is
the-
better?
It would be better at the work session
Okay.
as far as
I
time.
agree
Yeah.
with you, yes.
Yeah.
Work
But
session
you
would be
have to
better.
have resolution at that time, because if not, you're asking for a second meeting, then to bring resolution. I just want to,
Other question, just for clarification, do we have to present to the academic committee first before we present to the board?
the legislation is not written that way.
Okay.
The legislation is that it goes to the board, so the board makes a decision. I understand, but the academic committee gives an update to the board,
Okay,
but the legislation is not really written with a committee in between.
okay.
That's the only reason why they keep me around.
And then also, the question raises too, in terms of a work session. Work session may be, during the day versus, y'all committee members may want to be there.
Right,
Versus a board meeting is in the afternoon.
yeah.
So that raises another concern too, is in terms of how.
Your work schedules.
Yeah, if your work schedule.
So we're looking at either December 10th or making a recommendation to the first meeting in January. And I'll give you my,
It won't be the first meeting the first meeting in January would basically be elections and swearing in. So it would probably be the second meeting in January.
so now I have to put onto the table Rubicon.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, can we push the health unit into late winter, early spring to start? And how much time do we need for the health unit? Realize I was supposed to be in a class 8 minutes ago.
Something we'll have to look at.
Well,
Yeah, but I
because,
mean, I think it's feasible and it's doable.
I do think it's feasible.
Yeah, but I do have that question, how long is the term for the lessons for the middle school and high school? That's my question.
And how do we get them in late winter? or
Yes,
spring?
yes, and yes, that's all. So is this something that's 9 weeks, 6 weeks?
That's what we,
and then segregating classes.
Scheduling.
Yeah, and I'm
At the
really
building
missing
level.
more Rubicon,
Right.
Missy, like how much time generally, so you can. quarter
Over and
ends,
above the
grades.
other health content.
right, that's what, we've had this discussion multiple times, but I can't give you a specific timeline, but we can.
But can we do it in
We
third
can-
marking period?
I say yes, we'll find a
Yeah.
way to make it happen.
Okay, that's my question, right? Can we close out the third marking period with it? Or you start fourth marking period with it? That's all I'm trying to.
got some work to do, but yes, we can get it done.
Emily doesn't realize you just got voted in.
She's
not here?
She's not on.
It's not on. Emily had to leave, so she doesn't know what you all are about to do.
I
to
know
her.
that.
Emily's gonna be out at Hilton Head Middle School a lot.
So, yes, we can.
Next steps and next meeting.
So I think,
Concerns,
I
recommendations
think
at our
that,
next.
to me,
meeting.
that's much more important. Being thorough with the concerns and recommendations, that may take 2 meetings before you even go in front of the board.
Okay.
I'd
Now that
like,
we've got a
I
general
mean,
timeline.
I don't wanna take advantage of your time. You can say, hey, Mayor. I want pizza.
Okay.
Okay, but I wanna be thorough, that's all.
Sure.
Because
Absolutely.
y'all are fantastic.
Mhm.
Well, by now we have a vested interest in this. so we- See it done
Y'all went back to school
appropriately.
yourselves.
So whatever,
So that would be like, I think November 4th is in 2 weeks.
That would, we have agenda settings, so we
Okay.
wouldn't be able to do it on the
Alright.
board.
So then that leaves the 18th or the 25th in November. That 25th would be just before Thanksgiving. So I don't know if we,
Yeah.
18th.
we want to tentatively put a December date just in case if we decide that we need it. And then that way it's scheduled and we're not, since it's a crazy time of year.
So we
Yes.
have, hold on. So we
So we're
have
looking at
advisory on the 18th at
Yes.
5, okay? And then December,
We have a 2, a 9, and a 16 before the holidays get.
Yeah.
Because the next, are y'all off that following week too?
we're on Christmas week,
That is
Yes,
Christmas
yeah.
week, yeah.
the 23rd, but
Yep.
I mean, but during the week of the 16th.
the 23rd would be a virtual day.
Right.
For students
Yes, ma'am.
and teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
And staff.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the way it
Just thinking,
Is he, sir?
oh no, just thinking, circle back with you.
Okay.
So we're not trying to go before the board on the 10th,
I think we're better
but
off
off
to
two
meet.
Wednesdays, okay. So
Your
do you want the
concerns and table
16th or
Research.
the 16th?
December 16th?
Yes.
The answer to that is yes.
That'd be 4 weeks after the November meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, and you. Only because if I have to travel, and I'm trying not to. I'd like
And
to
it's
be at
just
the
very
meetings.
difficult the day before board meeting, so I
Yeah.
personally would rather not on the
Yes,
day
ma'am.
before board meeting, so.
Especially the
16th
last one of the year.
Exactly, yeah,
Mm.
so the 16th would be nice.
So the 9th it is.
Plan for board presentation, the second meeting of January.
And you load it to 3.
Oh, wow. Please refer to your handout.
What date would that be? No more questions.
Miss
Now,
Robin,
that's
what
the
day would
beauty
that
that
be?
it goes to committee,
Right.
right? So that's where Ms. Pryor has a point. If it goes to committee, and all the work happens at committee.
Right. That would be on the 20th of November.
You mean January?
What's the January day?
Yeah, what's the January date?
The second. Oh,
Is that
We
what
have
you're
not
asking?
scheduled, we have,
Yeah.
so
so
it's just gonna be whatever the.
Whenever the second board meeting is in January.
perhaps.
But we don't have.
So, so we will put a schedule, the board will do a schedule in November at the work session and approve. But if they have a work session in January, that makes the only one business board meeting in a work session, but they have to.
So
that'll
we'll
get
either
set in
present
the-
at the second board meeting or the work session.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
But the
Um,
work session is daytime, which is.
Well, I can, my principal,
And it's usually on Fridays, so our work sessions are on Fridays.
my principal is quite gracious. And I will say how awesome he is, because this is a recorded meeting and he's a former health and PE guy. So I know he'll take care of.
Race the cars.
He's been super supportive all the way, so I'm not just saying.
She would need
Thank you.
a month's
Thank you.
notice. for being
I just need a month in advance notice so that they don't put any, they can go out and see it.
I need to do something right.
You want to have a month's notice.
Constance has that. So hopefully we'll know in December, by the December